Jake was my older brother, my protector, my secret keeper. The one who taught me the difference between good rock and bad, and who always knew where our parents hid the good ice cream. He was my anchor dot, and then one night he vanished. No phone. Call. No trace. Just gone. Erased from our lives dot, and then 3 weeks later, his diary showed up in our mailbox. This story is about the secrets people keep, and how sometimes the people we think we know best are fighting battles we know nothing about. It makes you think, doesn't it? If you want to follow me down this rabbit hole to find out what happened to Jake, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss a single clue. Now, let's go back to that last night. That night was nothing special. A classic Tuesday evening, the kind that only exists to make the week feel longer. Jake and I were deep in our favorite form of escapism, saving the galaxy from some alien bug invasion in a video game. I was on the floor, sitting way too close to the screen, like my mom always warned me not to, and Jake was sprawled out in his old beanbag chair, which made a sound like a dying man every time he moved. He was quiet, too quiet. Usually our gaming sessions were a storm of sarcastic comments, friendly insults, and arguments over who was supposed to be grabbing the ammo. But that night, Jake was somewhere else entirely. His character, a space marine in full power armor, would just stop sometimes, staring out at the digital landscape of a hostile planet. It was very philosophical for a guy whose job was to turn aliens into green goo. "Hey," I said, nudging him with my foot. "You with us, or have you achieved enlightenment? There's a swarm coming and you're meditating." He blinked like he was surfacing from underwater. "Sorry, zoned out." "Let me guess, thinking about the meaning of life? Or about how those bugs have way too many legs?" He gave a small smile. It was a weak, tired thing that didn't reach his eyes. They were missing their usual mischievous spark. "Something like that," he said, and his marine finally opened fire. We finished the level, winning another meaningless but satisfying victory. I announced I had enough heroism for one day and got up to go to bed. "All right, squirt," he said, getting up to dot, and that's when he did the first thing that, looking back, feels like a blaring red flag. He hugged me. Not his usual quick pat on the back, but a real hug. Tight, the kind that squeezes the air out of you for a second. He held on for a beat longer than he should have, and I felt him let out a heavy sigh into the top of my head. "Everything's gonna be okay, you hear me?" he whispered. "Is something wrong?" I asked, trying to catch his eye, but he'd already turned away, heading for the front door. "Nah, all good, just tired." He threw on his worn-out denim jacket and slipped on his sneakers. "You going somewhere? It's almost midnight." "Just for a walk," he said, already opening the door. "Gonna clear my head. I'll be back in 10. That was the last thing I ever heard him say. "I'll be back in 10. The door creaked. Shut, the lock clicked. His footsteps faded down the driveway. For the first half hour, I wasn't worried. Jake's 10 minutes was a flexible concept. Then I got annoyed. Then I got worried. I called his phone. It rang and rang, straight to voicemail. I looked out the window. The street was empty, just a lonely streetlight illuminating a patch of wet asphalt dot. By 1 a.m., a cold, sticky fear started to creep into my veins. I woke up our parents. Our house, normally so calm and safe, was instantly filled with panic. My mom started calling his friends, her voice growing more strained with each call. My dad just paced the living room in silence, his face a stone mask. In the morning, we reported him missing. An officer came by with a look on his face that said he'd seen this 1,000 times. A tired, cynical look that said another teenager ran off to play at being independent. He asked the standard questions. Was he in trouble? any enemies, a girlfriend he'd fought with. He nodded at all our negatives with a look that clearly meant, sure, of course not. He left a card and said patrol cars would keep an eye out. But Jake didn't come back. Not the next day, not the next week. His room across the hall from mine became a silent accusation. The unmade bed, the controller on the floor, the stack of comic books on his desk. Everything frozen, waiting. Is a terrible thing. It eats you from the inside out. Every phone call made my heart drop. Every car that slowed down outside made me run to the window. But it was always followed by disappointment. The world had shrunk to a single point. The empty chair at the dinner table where Jake used to sit Dot, and in that deafening silence, filled with unspoken fears, the only thing I had to hold on to was a memory I played over and over. His hug, a second, too long. His whisper, a little too serious. And his promise, which turned out to be the cruelest lie, I'll be back in 10. Asterisk 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours. I started measuring time and missed calls to his phone, and sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling. The police would politely inform us there was no news, which was their official way of saying, we have no idea where your brother is. And frankly, we have bigger things to deal with than another runaway. Jake's friends called less and less, not knowing what to say. Sympathy has an expiration date, after which it just becomes awkward silence. Our house fell into a strange, muted existence. We spoke in whispers and walked on tiptoes, as if afraid of scaring away some fragile hope. My mom mechanically cooked dinners that no one really ate. My dad would sit for hours in his armchair, staring at a dark TV screen. The atmosphere was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and then on the 22nd day, something changed. I was walking home from school, dragging my feet as usual, feeling the pitying, sideways glances from my classmates. I'd become a local tragedy. That's the girl whose brother disappeared. I hated it. Hated their whispers and their clumsy attempts to cheer me up. As I got to the house, I automatically checked the mailbox. Usually it was just bills and junk mail, but that day there was a thick brown craft paper envelope inside. No return address. No stamp. Someone had placed it there by hand. My name, Anya, was written on it in block letters. I didn't recognize the handwriting. My heart skipped a beat, then started hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I flew into the house, slammed the door, and ran to my room. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tear the envelope open. Inside was a simple black hardcover notebook, the kind you can buy at any office supply store. I recognized it immediately. Jake used to carry it everywhere. He called it his captain's log. I always joked that he was writing down his master plans to take over the world, or lyrics for his non-existent rock band. It was his diary. I opened it. The familiar smell of paper and ink filled the air. The first few pages were painfully normal. Notes from chemistry class, a few formulas, a cartoon of a teacher drawn in the margins, a to-do list, fix bike, download New The Killer's album. Don't forget Mom's birthday. This was the Jake I knew. A little scattered, obsessed with music, living a normal teenage life. I kept turning the pages. The handwriting started to change. Neat lines gave way to rushed, almost illegible scrawls. Here were lyrics to some song full of angst and anxiety. Lines about feeling alone in a crowd. I read, feeling tears rolling down my cheeks. This was the part of him he never showed anyone, and then I got to the part that made my blood run cold. About a month before he disappeared, the tone of the entries changed abruptly. Innocent thoughts were replaced by paranoia. October 15th, weird feeling, like I'm being watched. When I walk home from school, I swear the same car is behind me. A dark van. Old, beat up. Maybe I'm just imagining things. I watched too many thrillers. October 19th, that it was there again. Parked across the street from the house. I saw it, just sitting there, headlights off. I tried to see who was driving, but the windows are tinted. My heart was pounding like crazy. This isn't a coincidence anymore. October 25th, can't sleep. Every noise outside makes me jump. I think I'm going crazy. I'd tell mom and dad, but they'll just think I've been reading junk. Tell me to play fewer video games. They wouldn't get it. The pages were filled with these hurried, chaotic entries. Some words were circled over and over, pressed so hard the pen almost tore through the paper. On a few pages, I saw dark smudges, tear stains. My brother, my strong, confident brother, had been crying while he wrote this. Alone in his room, while I was just on the other side of the wall, listening to music or laughing at some dumb show, I sat on my bedroom floor, clutching that diary like a drowning person clutches a life raft. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only me, this notebook, and the echo of my brother's voice on every single page. This wasn't just a diary. It was a cry for help that no one had heard. The police were wrong. He didn't run away. He was afraid of something. Or someone. And that someone was probably the reason he was gone. The coldness that had settled inside me the night he left was replaced by something else. A burning, icy rage. I looked at the last entry made on the day he disappeared. It was just one sentence, written in a crooked, shaky hand. I have to do this. There's no other way to do what? What did he have to do? The diary didn't give me answers, but it gave me a direction. Somewhere between these lines, between these frightened entries and tear-stained pages, there was a key, and I knew I had to find it. The diary became my obsession. I carried it everywhere, rereading the pages until I had them memorized. At school, I'd hide it under my history textbook, pretending to be fascinated by the fall of the Roman Empire when I was actually trying to decipher my own brother's handwriting. At night, I read it under the covers with a flashlight, just like when I was a kid, only instead of fairy tales. I was reading a chronicle of someone's fear. My parents saw my obsession but didn't say anything. I think they were just glad I'd found some way to cope, even if it meant picking at the wound over and over again. To them, the diary was a final tragic letter from their son. For me, it had become a map of a minefield that Jake had walked through, and I had to trace his steps without blowing myself up. I started reading between the lines, looking not for what he wrote, but what he didn't. A teenager's diary is a masterclass in metaphor and coded language. No one writes, I'm being blackmailed and I fear for my life. They write about a shadow that follows me or a debt that has to be paid. That's how I found the friend. October. 30 thoughts saw him again. He says I'm doing the right thing, that it's the only way to protect her, but the cost is too high. Every time we meet, I feel like a piece of me breaks off and falls into the void. He's not a bad person, just broken. And he breaks everything he touches, a friend. Jake had plenty of buddies, but no singular friend like this. I knew all his close friends by name, Mike from across the street, Sam from his coding club, even that goofy guy Kevin who still collected Pokemon figures. Jake never hid his friends, but this one, he was never mentioned. No name, no details. Just him. That was the first red flag. The people we hide are usually either our lovers or our enemies. Given the tone of the entries, the first option was out. It got worse. The mentions of meetings became more frequent, and they always happened late at night. November 5, meeting at the old bridge. That van again. He gave me a flash drive, told me to guard it with my life. It's insurance, he said. I don't want to know what's on it, but I can feel the weight of this tiny piece of plastic in my pocket, and it's heavier than the whole world. A flash drive, a dark van, late night meetings. The picture was becoming more sinister. My brother, the guy who was scared of getting a bad grade in algebra, was involved in something dangerous, something that required insurance on a flash drive. My sarcasm, my easy armor against the world started to crack. This wasn't a game. I started my own investigation, feeling like a character in a cheap detective novel. I tore his room apart, methodically at first, then frantically. I checked every pocket of his clothes in the closet. I looked under the mattress, shook out every book, knocked on the walls, looking for secret compartments I'd read about in novels. Nothing. The room was sterile, ordinary. The room of a teenager who just stepped out for 10 minutes and never came back. But the flash drive wouldn't leave my mind. Jake was old school about some things. He loved physical media. He collected vinyl records, kept old photos in a shoebox, instead of on a cloud. If he had an important flash drive, he wouldn't leave it lying around. He would hide it. But where? I sat on the floor of his room, surrounded by the chaos of my search. My eyes fell on his old desk. Behind it, against the wall, was a narrow gap where pens and other junk always disappeared. It was the one place I hadn't looked. Grunting with effort, I pushed the heavy dresser away from the wall and shone my phone's flashlight into the dusty. Spaced out at first, I only saw dust bunnies and a couple of long lost coins. And then my beam of light caught a small, rectangular object taped to the back of the dresser. It was there. A small black flash drive. My heart started hammering so loud I thought it could be heard in the next room. I peeled it off. The plastic was cold to the touch. Insurance. What secrets were you keeping, Jake? What was so important that it was worth your freedom? Or maybe even your life? I clutched the flash drive in my fist. The metal edge dug uncomfortably into my palm. In that moment, I felt what he must have felt. Not just fear, but the weight of responsibility. This little thing was no longer just a data storage device. It was his last word, his final will and testament, and I knew I had to read it. Plugging that flash drive into my laptop was one of the scariest things I've ever done. Scarier than going to the dentist. Scarier than admitting to my parents I'd failed a physics exam. The second it took for the computer to recognize the new device stretched into an eternity. My finger hovered over the trackpad as a window popped. Up, showing the drive's contents. There was only one folder on it. The name was brilliantly simple and terrifyingly ominous. IF_something_happens. My stomach twisted into a knot of ice. This wasn't like Jake, who named his game folders random crap or do not touch. This was a direct, unambiguous message. I clicked the folder open. Inside were several files of different types, audio recordings, text documents with saved chat logs, a few screenshots, and a folder of photos. I felt like I was hacking into someone's life. But it wasn't a stranger's life. It was my brother's secret hidden world. I started with the text files. They were chat logs from some messaging app I didn't recognize. Jake was talking to an anonymous user with the handle Phoenix. Jake, you can't do this to her. She trusts you. Phoenix. Trust is a resource. Sometimes you have to spend it. You're too young to understand that. Stay out of things that don't concern you. Jake, this concerns me now. I saw the bruises. If you touch her again, I'll tell everyone. Phoenix. Tell them what? That a respected man, someone everyone knows and loves, isn't a saint? No one will believe. You, kid. But it will make things very difficult for your little friend M and for you. I have a long reach. M. The letter appeared out of nowhere, but I knew it wasn't random. In the diary, Jake had written, ... the only way to protect her. Now, her had an initial. M. I started running through all the girls Jake knew. Madison, Mia, Mary. None of them seemed to fit the profile of a victim. They all seemed too normal. Then I moved to the screenshots. They were fragments of the same chats, but this time the user's real name was visible. And the name I saw made me freeze. Mr. Henderson, our English literature teacher. Always smiling, charming, a favorite of both students and the administration. The guy who quoted Shakespeare and organized the school plays. He was Phoenix. He was the friend Jake wrote about. Not a friend, a predator. I felt sick. The image of Mr. Henderson, the kind, benevolent mentor, shattered, leaving behind an ugly, disgusting truth. A respected man, someone everyone knows and loves. Jake was right. Who would believe a teenager over an exemplary teacher? With trembling hands, I opened the audio folder. They were short voice memos, recordings Jake had obviously made in a hurry, hiding somewhere. His voice was barely recognizable. Quiet, breaking, filled with fear. Recording one, he threatened me again today. Said if I don't stop sticking my nose in his business, he'll set me up. Make it look like I'm on drugs or something. Said he could ruin my future with one phone call. Recording 3. M was crying today. She's scared. She begged me not to do anything, said he'll only make it worse. But I can't just stand by and watch. I can single quotes T. Recording 5. He knows I'm collecting stuff. He's following me. That man, it's his. He told me I'm playing a dangerous game. Maybe he's right. Each recording was a punch to the gut. I was listening to my brother, my protector, slowly breaking under the pressure. He was alone against a manipulative, powerful man who was systematically terrorizing him. He was trying to protect someone and got caught in a trap. I scrolled through the recordings, and then one caught my eye. It was dated the day he disappeared. Jake's voice was almost a whisper, with the sound of wind in the background. He spoke like he was saying goodbye. If anything happens to me, tell Mom I tried. Tell her I love her, and Anya too. Tell Anya to stay out of this, to just live her life. I have to meet him tonight. One last time. I'm going to give him everything I have in exchange for her peace of mind. I hope he keeps his word. The recording ended. I sat in total silence, the folder glowing on the screen. Tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't notice. He hadn't just vanished. He had gone to a meeting he may not have planned on returning from. He was going to sacrifice himself. And his last thought was about me. About keeping me safe. You. Stupid, selfless, brave idiot. Stay out of this. Easy for you to say it was my business now. This diary, this flash drive. It wasn't just an inheritance. It was a baton. And he had passed it to me. There was one last folder. Photos. I clicked on it, bracing myself for the worst. The photos folder contained a single file. One image. I opened it, and the screen went white for a second before the picture loaded. It was a selfie. A selfie of Jake, taken in what looked like his room. But this wasn't the Jake I knew. In the photo, he was staring straight into the camera, but his expression wasn't posed. It was just tired and filled with a quiet, stubborn anger. The left side of his face was swollen, and a nasty purple and blue bruise was blooming under his eye. His lip was split. A hot flash of rage went through me. This was physical proof. This was it. It wasn't just psychological pressure and threats in a chat anymore. This was violence. Mr. Henderson, the respected man, had laid a hand on my brother. This photo wasn't for social media. It was evidence. Another piece of his insurance. I snapped the laptop shut. The air in the room felt thin. The rage I'd felt before turned into something colder, sharper. Determination. Stay out of this. He had said, sorry, Jake, but that's no longer an option. You would have done the same for me. I listened to the last audio recording again. If anything happens to me, tell Mom I tried. Those words no longer sounded like a goodbye. They sounded like an instruction. He knew he was taking a huge risk. He knew he might not come back. And he left this trail not for me to ignore, but because deep down, he was hoping someone would follow it to the end. The police. My first thought was to take them everything. The diary, the flash drive, the photo. But then I remembered the tired, indifferent face of that sergeant. Remembered how he looked at us like we were just another box to check on his to-do list. What would they do? Asked Mr. Henderson a few questions. He'd deny everything. He was a respected man, after all. He'd say Jake was a troubled kid, that he made it all up. And they'd believe him. They had no body, no direct witnesses. All I had was circumstantial evidence that a good lawyer would tear to shreds. No, going to the police was too soon. I needed something more. I needed someone who could corroborate the story. M. The name was pulsing in my head. The girl Jake was trying to protect. The girl this was all about. She was the key. If she would talk, the story would have a second voice. And it would no longer look like a teenager's fantasy. But how could I find her? I only had an initial. I started running through the names again. Madison, Mia, Mary. Wait. In Jake's diary, amongst the normal entries from months before this nightmare started, there was one mention. Argued with Mariah again in English class. Today about the ending of The Great Gatsby. She's the only one who gets what that book is really about. Smart. Too smart for this town. Mariah, a quiet, unassuming girl from her grade. She always sat at the back, rarely raised her hand, but when she was called on, she answered in a way that made even Mr. Henderson listen with genuine interest. She was smart and a loner. The perfect target. My heart lurched. It had to be her. And for Mariah. Finding her number took 5 minutes. We were in a group chat for our class. I found her name in the member list and stared at the message button. What would I even say? Hi, it's Anya, Jake's sister. My brother disappeared while trying to protect you from our English teacher who also might have killed him. Wanna grab a coffee and chat? It sounded insane. I typed and deleted a message 10 times. My fingers wouldn't cooperate. What if I was wrong? What if she got scared and blocked me? What if Henderson was still controlling her and she told him I called? I took a deep breath and listened to my brother's voice one more time. I can't just stand by and watch. Neither could I. I didn't text. I hit the call button. It rang. The long, drawn-out tones echoed in my head. I was just about to hang up, convinced this was a terrible idea, when a quiet, frightened voice answered. Hello. It was her, Mariah. I recognized her voice, even though I'd only heard it a few times in class. Mariah? Hi, it's Anya, Jake's sister. There was a silence on the other end of the line. So thick I could hear my own breathing. For a second, I thought she'd hung up. I'm listening, she finally said. Her voice was trembling. I know this is going to sound crazy, I began, trying to keep my own voice steady. I found Jake's diary and some other things. I think I know what was happening before he disappeared. Silence again. Then a quiet sob. I'm not supposed to talk to you, she whispered. He said if I talked to anyone, Henderson. I said his name out loud, and it sounded like a verdict in the quiet room. Her sob turned into choked, silent crying. Please don't, she begged. Mariah, I need you to listen to me, I said as firmly as I could. Jake didn't. Just leave. He was trying to protect you. He left recordings. Photos. He documented everything. He went to meet Henderson that night. He was going to give him all of it in exchange for your safety. I could hear her trying to swallow her tears. Her breathing ragged. He shouldn't have. I asked him to stay out of it. Her voice was barely audible. I told him it was dangerous. Tell me, I asked, my voice softening. Please tell me everything. You're the only person who can. I won't go to the police without your permission. I just, I just need to know what happened to my brother. It felt like an eternity passed before she spoke again. And when she did, the words came out in a jumbled, desperate rush. She told me everything. It started with extra help in English class, with praise that slowly became too personal, compliments that crossed the line. Then the late night messages began, innocent at first about books, about homework. Then they became more and more invasive. He told her he understood her like no one else, that she was special. And then he started touching her, accidental brushes of her hand, her shoulder. One day, he cornered her in an empty classroom after school. She got scared, pushed him away, and that's when his mask of the kind mentor fell off. He started threatening her. Said he'd ruin her grades, make sure she wouldn't get into any college. Said he'd tell everyone she was the one who came on to him. She was trapped, terrified, and broken, Jake noticed. He was the only one who saw something was wrong with her. She didn't know how, but he knew. He approached her after school one day and just asked, "He's bothering you, isn't he?" And she broke down and told him everything. He was furious. Mariah whispered into the phone. I'd never seen him like that. He said he wouldn't let that bastard ruin my life. He started gathering proof. He tried to get me to go to the principal, to my parents. But I was too scared. I begged him to drop it. But Jake was stubborn. He started messaging Henderson, trying to intimidate him, to get him to back off. That's when Henderson turned on him, the threats, the stalking. And then he beat him up. It happened the week before. Before everything, her voice broke. Jake came to school with a bruise, told everyone he fell off his bike. But he told me the truth. Henderson cornered him one evening and beat him. Told him it was just the beginning if he didn't back off. So that's where the photo came from. That's why he looked so angry and helpless. The last night he messaged me, Mariah continued, no longer hiding her tears. He said he had a plan, that he was going to meet Henderson and end this for good. He said that after tonight, Henderson would never bother me again. I tried to talk him out of it. I called him, but he didn't answer. And then he was just gone. Have you seen him since? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No, she said quietly, and I haven't seen Henderson either. The day after Jake disappeared, he took an indefinite leave for family reasons. No one at school has seen him since. The picture was complete. All the puzzle pieces clicked into place. Jake went to the meeting. He probably tried to blackmail Henderson to force him out of Mariah's life, using the flash drive as leverage. But something went wrong. Henderson didn't keep his word. He didn't just take the insurance. He took my brother, too. And then he ran. Mariah, I swallowed the lump in my throat. Are you ready to talk about this? Not to me. To people who can help. She was silent. I could only hear her heavy breathing. I'm scared, Anya. Me too, I admitted honestly. But Jake was braver than both of us. We can't let him be a martyr for nothing. I'll be with you every step of the way. There was a deep, shuddering breath on the other end of the line. The sound of someone who has been carrying an impossible weight for too long and has finally decided to put it down. Yes, she said. Her voice was still quiet, but there was a new note in it, a note of steel. Yes, I'll talk. When I hung up the phone, the room was completely silent. The world, which for the last half hour had consisted only of my voice and Mariah's trembling whisper, came rushing back in. The sound of cars outside, the ticking of a clock, the hum of the fridge from the kitchen. Everything was the same, but I was different. The hole Jake left behind was still there. But now it was filled with something. Not answers, no. It was filled with purpose. My brother didn't run away. He didn't abandon. US. He wasn't some reckless teenager who got in with a bad crowd. The entire narrative the police, our neighbors, and even in our darkest moments, we ourselves had painted, crumbled to dust. He disappeared because he knew something he shouldn't have. He disappeared because he stood in the way of a monster, wearing a friendly mask. He disappeared because he was the only one brave enough not to look away. My brother wasn't a runaway. He was a soldier, and he lost his battle, alone on the field. The grief didn't go away. It still sat like a heavy stone in my chest, but now it had a purpose. It was no longer a paralyzing poison, it was fuel. Cold, furious fuel. His diary, which I once read with helpless tears, now lies on my desk like a map. The flash drive with his last recordings is my compass. And Mariah's voice, full of fear but now also resolve, is my first ally. I know what happens next. Tomorrow, Mariah and I are going to the police. Not with a request, but with a demand. We won't be bringing them tears. We'll be bringing them evidence. A diary, voice recordings, a photo of my brother's beaten face, and the living testimony of the girl he tried to save. Maybe it won't be enough. Maybe they won't believe us again. But we will not be silent anymore. Jake's story will be heard. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's alive. That thought is a splinter under my skin, a constant, dull ache. But hope, as faint as it is, stubbornly refuses to die. The hope that Henderson, in a panic, just hid him somewhere, scared him into silence. That Jake is out there waiting to be found. I pick up his diary. I run my fingers over the worn black cover. He started it to write down song lyrics and thoughts about books. He ended it as a chronicle of his own war. It's my map now, my manifesto. I will not rest until I have followed his path to the very end. I don't care how long it takes. I will find him. Or I will find the truth of what was done to him. I close the diary. The sharp clap echoes in the quiet room. Outside, a storm is gathering. I can hear the distant rumble of thunder growing closer, as if the world itself is responding to my newfound resolve. And if he's out there somewhere, if he can somehow hear me, Jake, I'm not giving up. I'm coming for you, my heart is no longer pounding with fear. It beats steady, strong, a drumbeat for a new march. And that march will lead me to him. My search is just beginning. What do you think I should do next? Who else should I talk to? Leave your theories and your advice for me in the comments below. Your ideas might just help me see something I've missed. And make sure you're subscribed because I promise you, this isn't over.